So, if I was to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning a year or two ago, I would be like a zombie. I would feel awake but yet asleep. I would feel like I'm not functioning with all of my marbles. I know what I would have been like a couple of years ago if I was up at this time in the morning and try to put two words together. And so I said yesterday or the day before that 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is the weakest times for an individual, and people die between 3 and 5 a.m. They die in their sleep. But why is that? Because the person did not take care of themselves when they were awake, and so they die in their sleep. And the pain, here's the thing, I'm not in pain because I've conditioned to respond to the indicators of my body when there is arm pain or shoulder pain, that I get up immediately and use the restroom and make sure everything is completely gone down there as much as I can. And then I take a shower, open up the blood vessels with the warm water, hot water, warm water, not too hot. And then I'm up. I'm awake. It's done. It's done. It means I'm not going back to sleep. Sometimes I'll feel a bit of pain and I'll go back to sleep, get up around 5. That was like that the last couple of days. And sometimes I'll wake up and I will be completely up. I know there's no way for me, even listening to my videos, I know there's no way for me to go back to sleep. And so I just get up. And that has been about 5 years, ever since the pandemic, of conditioning. And it was painful. So you thought that the first 3 years, since 2016, 17, 18, 19, the first 3 years of the J world. And you saw that we were doing the waterfalls and all the backlash, and everyone was giving their testimonies, and then me jumping from a website to different platforms, developing my website, and then the books and all that. That was all part of that purge process. The first 3 years was like a major initial purge. Figuring out the background, where I came from. So that was all part of it. But the real test in the Jilly Juice world was getting off the Jilly Juice and dealing with the pandemic. Now people say, oh, it's the VACCINESs, and that was the only reason why people are dying. And it was all a farce. It was all fake in China when they showed all that. No, it was all real. Because China has 1 billion people, and you change the climate, change the frequencies in one part of the country is going to feel stuff, and then they're going to be communicable. So that was, we weren't going to be immune to that. So when the pandemic first hit, before people really took it seriously, I noticed changes. I noticed everything was getting bigger on me. And then that was the buildup for the release. And then it was coughing and sneezing and blowing my nose and hunger and pain and suffering and fatigue and anxiety. And I'll tell you, man, some of the bouts of the symptoms that woke up, well, everybody has colony forming units that when all the conditions are right, they wake up and they bloom. And when they bloom, people get full of anxiety. They're in pain and suffering, full of anxiety. Some people die suddenly. Other people feel like they can't move. Like literally, they can't move. And I remember 1 year in 2022, after allegedly CERN was turned on, and who's to say if that's correlation equals causation, where I felt like I was ridden by a type of mycoplasma, a type of web-like substance. If I was going to explain kind of how it felt like and kind of how it was like a web-like substance. And I couldn't move, hardly move. It was like if I stayed in my bed like I wanted to and just not move because my poop wasn't moving, I wasn't even blowing my nose. I was stuffed up. So I was stuffed up here, stuffed up down there. My dog was one like, what the fuck? This is when my dog was alive. And she was the one that got me moving. She was the one who was like, what the hell? She was the one that got me up out of bed because I had to feed her, of course. I had to, put her outside. And even though I was like at death's door in July 2022 and all the different headaches following up to that, I probably would have died if it wasn't for her. And so then I realized what I had to do to save my own ass, literally. And that was what I have in my book, but I don't have the book anymore because there's no way I could sell this to people. You'd have to follow me for a long time to know the routines I go through to make sure I don't die overnight and I don't die suddenly during the day. And up here and down there have to talk to each other. You have to know the pain. It's not just enduring the pain and hoping it'll go away. There are actual actions that I take when I know the body is trying to push something out. I don't take drugs. I don't do alcohol. I don't take any remedies. I don't withhold food from myself. I don't say I should just eat a salad. I don't say, oh, I need to swear off of meat. No, I don't go down any of those roads. I know the body is trying to push out poop, yes, but also push all those different clots or growths from the different frequencies, because you're going to have frequencies that cause growth and then other temperatures that cause constriction. And if you don't have the conditioning to deal with a lot of growth in constricted blood vessels and colons and intestines, then there's breakage. Then there is sepsis, breakage, aneurysms, heart attacks, all the things that people die from that you hear about. People drown in their own mucus because they can't release. I mean, these poor kids are not conditioned to blow their nose. They're not conditioned to poop. They're not conditioned to eat. Like I tell my husband, finally he's conditioned. I mean, it's tough for him, believe me. When he was home the last couple of days, because, he was home for a couple of days before he goes back to work again, his weekend, he says, oh God, I had a hell of a night, but he's awake. If he's up at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. and he's walking around, he's not dying. If he's in pain between 3 and 5 a.m., he's not dying. He's not dead. And if he can endure the pain, and I said, hey, you need to have milk in your truck. You need to buy milk. You need to have milk because milk is going to help release. But oh my gosh, sometimes for him it's coffee, which is fine. But you need the milk, the meat, the cheese, the eggs, because when you are releasing, you also have to rebuild simultaneously. And that's one half of the equation that people fail to understand. Yeah, you need to release, but how are you going to replace the substance and the infrastructure lost during that release? No different than when we're going through hurricanes. Yes, we have to release the demons, if I was to take it to that context. And I know it doesn't sound nice. But how are you going to then rebuild the infrastructure, and how are you going to make it better? And so that's why you need the meat, the milk, the cheese, the eggs, the fruits and vegetables, the carbs, the sugar, the salt. And if I was watching the movie The Whale last night with Brendan Fraser, and that was really good. And I felt for the guy in that, I felt for the main character. And I see him, he was just eating a bunch of food. Well, why he's so big is because he had so much shit in his system. Like literally, when you are that big, you have a lot of crap in your system. And you can't just release it all at once. That's not how it works. It's a progressive thing. And you have to change your lifestyle. Now, he was set up. He had money. He would work from home. I mean, he was, this is in the movie The Whale. So he worked from home. He was teaching online classes. And he could have progressively, systematically felt, the pain and suffering. And maybe you don't work from home because maybe you don't want to be teaching somebody when you're dealing with sickness. But you're going to have to release down there and feed up here. And it's a constant energy exchange. And it's something that it has to be consistent. You see me, I haven't been out there. I haven't been working ever since 2016. We think about it like at a traditional job. Okay? Yeah, I've traveled around here and there in the beginning of the J world. But after the pandemic, I stopped traveling. I might have gone to a few parties in between, 2019 and 2022, maybe 2023. I said no more parties. No more going out there in mixed company. Because I'm telling you, when you're taking on microbes through here, they come in through this immune system, this side of it. You get through your hands, through your feet, through the food supply, and you can't get ahead of the growth. You're taking on microbes that are causing offspring antibodies that turn into something that could be a cancer, disease, chronic illness, sometimes sexual orientation, sometimes sexual reproduction if you are in that mode. And people don't get that. They think, oh, okay, it's just like, oh, I just won't remedy the pain and I'll eat just this kind of food. There's no way. And that's the thing. There's nothing that I can do to make people get it. And their life is their life. But to survive this crazy energy conversion, to survive this climate change, it's going to take a major concerted effort on the person to understand what they could be in for. Heart attack, strokes, high blood pressure. Oh, God, I'm sweating. High blood pressure, headaches, blowing your nose, feeling bloated. It's going to take a concerted effort to know what you're in for and to sit with it and be around people who will support you in not making you do shit, who are relatively self-sufficient. If you have relatively self-sufficient children and you have to save yourself, they need to make their own food. They need to go and do their own laundry. They need to find a way to get themselves to point A and point B if mommy is sick. Mommy can't get up and go take them to wherever. They don't need to be entertained. Not at this point. It's too fucking dangerous even for them. But again, this is where we can't always save these children because it came in at deficit. Just like, when you have the boomers and you have the zoomers and even the millennials, and they're pretty much in deficit just trying to survive, and they have kids on their own, and you have the boomers and the silent generation, they're pretty much gone. I mean, it's going to take a concerted effort on their end to bring themselves up to a level of where they can, function as a 40-year-old, right? And so it's the Gen X. It's the Gen X that are kind of between, as long as you're not, completely immunocompromised and taken down, telomeric or, at the age telemerically of someone who's 80 in this society. But a Gen X who is relatively self-sufficient, doesn't have any kids, could probably release the dogs and the cats and everything out of the world. Maybe is married. Maybe has some kind of, income coming in, some, either passive income or they're independently wealthy or they inherited money and they don't have to be out there gallivanting around everybody. And they know what they're in for. They could potentially maybe, if they could handle it, and I couldn't tell you again because everybody's different. They can handle immune system activation, release, and retention. And sometimes you're up in the middle of the fucking night. Sometimes you're up in the middle of the night looking at videos because you can't sleep. Sometimes you can't sleep and then you listen to another video and you fall asleep for another couple hours like I did yesterday. I was up at 1 or 2 in the morning, listened to a video, went to sleep, woke up, oh, it's 5:30. Wow, holy shit, I slept in 5:30. I don't think I have slept until 8 o'clock and slept straight through the night since probably maybe 2022 and maybe even before that. It's been a while since I slept straight through the night because the energy is so aggressive that you're seeing even the diets on the groups. People are dying. 23-year-olds are dying. So when I'm awake at 3 to 5 a.m., somebody's probably dead because the energy is that influential, that strong, that accelerated, that children are dying, 23-year-olds are dying, 19-year-olds are dying, not even at night in bed, but also out there on the field as these parents keep pushing their kids to do shit, to be traditional like everybody else. But again, you can't make these kids, be up to the level of the environment, especially when they came in at deficit, because this is the thing, people don't realize that every single time you reproduce a child, it weakens the genetic line, and it also weakens, the genetic line, which is that kid, that offspring, weakens them. And it also weakens the parents that are taking care of that child. Because not only are you giving away your own resources, but you're putting forth so much effort to make sure that child survives, and that child's not going to survive because they don't have the means to. The traditions are so strong, and the environment is so different, people don't know what it is they're dealing with. So the only thing left for them to do is just do what they did before. but it's not going to work. It's not going to be survivable. If anything, it's going to shorten the lifespan because people don't understand what the world they're dealing with. So you almost can't fault these parents and grandparents. I mean, when you're on the outside looking in, you see me react. And you see me react so much. Other parents don't care. I'm sure they do, but they don't know what the fuck they're doing. That's the thing about having children. If you have to give them to a professional because you don't know what you're doing, when you have to go and give them to a professional, why would you have a child, if you have to give them to a professional? Oh, but I don't do it myself. But you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Oh, my mother taught me. Oh, yeah, grandma's dying. Grandma's dead. You think grandma knew what the fuck she was doing? No. Because she was given to a professional. And she did the traditions of the home remedies and the diets and blaming somebody, she still ended up dead. But children are supposed to die. Well, that's the thing. That's a belief that's so strong, that's in politics, religion, and science, in these cults called cultures, that, oh, you're supposed to die someday, and we're going to go off and meet the savior, whoever it is. And so it absolves people. It actually stops them from doing anything different. Of course, they won't have the awareness to do anything different. And so they keep doing what they do, and then one day they just don't wake up. One day they just die suddenly. And that's what the die suddenly groups are showing you. My husband and I went shopping yesterday for food. And so I wanted to go to Starbucks because I haven't been there in a while. And when I went there, the same lady that leads the Starbucks over there, she's like, oh my gosh. Because I used to go there religiously a lot. She's like, oh my gosh, you're here. I'm like, yeah, it's been a while. I wanted to go say hi to you guys. Because I remember being there religiously a couple years ago, and then I got my own machine, and so I just make stuff at home. So anyways, so I'm up at 3 a.m., and I'm functioning. I'm coherent. I could speak as if it was like 8 a.m., And it's a trip. And it's like the day walkers and the night walkers. Because during the day, especially the way it's been, and you look outside, when I was looking outside and you look at the sun, I mean, it's basically an LED light. The sun has turned into an LED light. And you can't even look I'm telling you, when I open up my curtains just to look outside when it's really sunny, you could barely look out. It is so bright. It's blinding and it's devastating. And it also causes immune system activation, entropy, and it also causes death suddenly. Because with that sunlight that is like LED, and you have particle acceleration, and maybe you have different therapies. You have your cannabis and your herbs and your extracts, or you have a public health therapy. Those offspring are on the move, and they will develop extremely fast, and to the point where when people die of clots and these embalmers are pulling out strings of clots, yeah, that's from the growth that happened so quickly the person did not have enough time to process it and break it up with their immune system. And so you have these growths that are blocking the blood vessels. Or you have petrified shit in your system. The body's trying to push out the petrified shit. People get perforated intestines. Then they get sepsis because there's blockage and leakage. And so they get blood poisoning. See, that's why it's so important to understand the power of milk. Understand that when you get mucus, you blow your nose. That's why milk is so important. Okay? And with the way this climate's changing, I wouldn't be out there. I wouldn't be traveling. Even just seeing some of these planes are catching on fire and people dying here and dying there. There's shootings here and shootings there. Why the hell would you go out there and travel around as if the world hasn't fucking changed and it isn't dangerous? The world's dangerous now. Do people not get it? That's the thing about people's traditions. They gotta have children. They gotta go and travel. They gotta practice their religions, which I get, okay? If you have religion hammered into you ever since you're a kid, that's hard to give up. And so the system knew this. I mean, when you bring in so many different species, I'm not saying people are like different species. No, you're just different immune system tolerances in a world that is lower frequency. But they, with those who hit the wall either at 30 or 20 or 50 or 90, they have methodologies, they have remedies, they have cures, they have protocols that could work, could not work, a certain percentage that will work and will not. Da, da, da. Okay, that was your society before, let's just say before 9/11. Everything was so peaceful before 9/11. 9/11 hit, oh my God, another world came into being. And then a few years after that, then I learned about Loose Change, which was a movie about 9/11 was an inside job. And that was shown to me through the college system. So now with the climate change, and then you're seeing more died suddenly. You're seeing more upticks in cancer, autism. You're seeing more autoimmune disorders. Now these kids and adults don't have the tolerance. Why? Because they're like dinosaurs. It's not like, the meteors came down and just completely obliterated it. I mean, I'm sure it happened over time. I'm sure that first explosion, whoever was in the path of that, dinosaurs or whoever, were obliterated. But then when the climate changed and the dinosaurs and whatever vegetation and biodiversity was used to a certain climate before the meteors came, before panspermia came. But when those meteors came and changed the climate, the ash put in the air, covered the sun, I'm sure other things were going on. Whatever was living at that time started deteriorating. Maybe they had kids, the kids weren't strong enough. They kept having more kids because there's more biodiversity in the air that they had to go and assimilate to, caused sexual reproduction. They have little baby dinosaurs that mutated into different things, but they couldn't withstand the climate change. And then it was extinction. Well, that's what's going on with these families. They're not only reproducing themselves out of existence, but they're surrounding themselves by people with microbes that are so influential that are reproducing the child out of existence. What do you mean? Because you're taking on microbes, you're getting an immune system activation called symptoms. People don't want to feel it. They take more remedies or they starve themselves so these kids don't have enough substance. They're living off of fumes. And they're out there gallivanting and taking on the traditions of mommy and daddy and everybody else. And so then they get reproduced out of existence through the fertility of just their environment. Let's say they're not even on remedies. Let's say they're not even taking any public health therapies. Let's say they never get sick. Well, when you never get sick, that's also pretty scary. Because it means you're taking on things that one day, when the climate does change, and there's a massive change, there's going to be growth be like this. It's not like a slow growth where you have time to kind of break it up and release and then assimilate. No, what happens is people hold on to stuff. And then when that energy is so influential, and there's all these little seedlings inside that I've seen in my body when I've released those demons, like little pods of cornets with little stringy things, like look like an egg with a bunch of sperm all around it. When the environment is so influential, climate change, whatever else you want to call it, and then the person gets hit by that energy, all of a sudden all those little seedlings in their body, those little pods of whatever, they grow so quickly. It's like this overnight. And they don't have enough immune system, or they do have enough immune system, and it takes whatever electrolytes are in the body and tries to push it out, but the exit points are too tight and not conditioned for release, and so the person is trying to release, but the body's saying no because it's conditioned not to release because of all the remedies, maybe from prior or however, or they just don't have enough expansion, contraction, conditioning, and the body breaks blood vessels. That's why you have to understand temperature and frequency and energy exchange. And while you can't resist the body doing what it has to do to keep itself alive, if you're awake right now, it's because you're meant to be, because your body is trying to push things through. And you got to poop. If you're up right now and you're in the West Coast or the East Coast and you're up right now, let's say it's 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, you should be pooping right now. You should be eating food right now, eating milk, cheese if you're not allergic, and you should be pooping. Because you're awake for a reason. The body wants you to do something. It wants you to keep it alive. And people don't listen to their body. So they're starving or they're doing drugs, which I understand. If you're in pain, that's the only thing you have left to do is do drugs. Or you're having bad dreams. Let me tell you, the dreams when your body is trying to release demons, oh my God, the dreams are crazy. And it's just like you're in the avatar world. You're dealing with some entities that you had no idea existed. And they could be microscopic entities, but when they're through your dreams, they are larger than life. And I've had some crazy ass dreams, and maybe from lives once lived many moons ago. I wouldn't discount that given my background from Asia. But you're also dealing with some entities in your body that don't want to leave. And people get very religious around that. When you're holding on to entities in your body that don't want to leave and they're talking to you, yeah, some people get diagnosable conditions like schizophrenia and other psychotic conditions because of the trauma of these microbes that found a way to make the person act a certain way. But if you don't have those types of extreme diagnoses, but you have trauma and sickness and you've gotten over things in the past, they're still in your body. Even though your body and the system allowed you to use the functions of your arms and legs and things that you've gotten over that you may have been handicapped in the past, but then was able to overcome it, you still hold that shit inside. Literally, you still hold it inside. And those entities, incubus, succubus, entities, the spiritual entities that cause people to congregate in religions and then have a hive mind mentality, groupthink, they still run people. And then when you surround yourself by the hive-minded people, they reinforce beliefs to keep the hive going, which is how the system was able to get people to not only believe in religions, but also put their heads together and devise some innovation for the world. So there's ways in which the system can use hive minds for the benefit of society, as well as set people up for a mass self-destruction. And it would be with people's permission. You have to get people's permission. And if they're not diagnosed with a condition, then they're of sound mind and body. And then they can sign on the dotted line. And so, so the dreams. The last couple years of dreams, the feeling of the presence in my room. Oh, seeing the black shadows inside of me. When I was doing the Facebook Lives, a lot of them, the orbs going back and forth, and buzzing around as if they were going in and out of the portals because they were open. And I remember feeling the vertigo a couple years ago. And I remember feeling the vertigo and feeling out of sorts and just laughing or something. When I was out there with my husband, when we were into a restaurant and then we went to the DMV and I'm just laughing, as if I was on some kind of drug. But no, I was high off my own fucking hormones because the climate shifted and something woke up inside. And then the last couple years, the last year or so, going into the Walmarts when I was also waking up some demons within, and I felt such anxiety. I mean, I went to Giant Eagle yesterday when we went shopping. I had a lot of energy. Let me tell you, all these department stores, every single place where there's so much electricity. I mean, it's more influential now because of the way the climate is. But they give off a lot of energy. And if you have things inside that have to be released and wake up, people could go into and not even just the microbes. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's why people wear masks. But it's the energy that wakes up the beast within. That's what people faint. I've seen people when I went to Walmart a couple years ago, a girl 16 or whatever fainted right behind me. That's when I did a Facebook Live going oh my God, somebody fainted. Holy shit. You don't see that very often. When you do, you're like, oh shit, yeah. But these environments are so energetic, they wake up things. And so, so when I went into Walmart a couple years ago, man, I'll tell you, I felt such anxiety. I felt oh my God, I got to keep it together. I literally had to feel I had to keep, I had to consciously figure out how to keep it together. Not I was going to do anything crazy, but I was I felt such anxiety. It's crazy. But no, now I can go to these department stores, whatever, or Walmart or Giant Eagle, and I'll feel the energy, but I won't feel the anxiety. but I'll be zipping around thinking so quick. And so this energy in this environment can make you think extremely quickly, fast on your feet. There is definitely a strength in my arms. And I'm getting used to the indicators. And so when I'm listening to the indicators at 3 in the morning, and it's time to take a poop, Jillian, okay. And I feel it in my arms. Sometimes, like when it's conditioning, you can barely move your arm. That's why these women out there are getting frozen shoulder. Because the change. Women go through the change. It doesn't mean the change is supposed to be deadly and you're supposed to end up droopy or obese or the crypt keeper. The change also means the body is now saying, okay, it's the end of this Hayflick line. What's the Hayflick? Leonard Hayflick says that the somatic mortal cells can only redouble itself 50 times over. And then the immortalized germline cell from Henrietta Lacks. What do you mean by Henrietta Lacks? She was the one that was experimented upon way back in 1950s or so. And she never gave permission, but they took some kind of cancer cell from either her cervical cancer or ovarian cancer. And they did test on it, and they kept reproducing new, germline cells. So germs are immortalized. Okay? Germline cells are immortalized. And then you have the somatic cells, which is basically the downline, the support system, the little soldier. So you have the general called the immortalized germline cells. Then you have all the lieutenants, which is the somatic cells. They can only redouble itself 50 times over. And then it's able to go to the next infantry, the next, I guess. That's basically what's going on is that the change is them changing from one immortalized germline cell to another and trying to develop disease to release so the person can regain another lifeline. But these women resist it. Men too. I say my husband's a man, but he's going through a change too. But it's not like menopause. You wouldn't call what a man goes through right now, dealing with the pain and suffering and cancer, menopause. No, you call it cancer, disease, chronic illness, or chronic pain. But it's all the same shit. Men go through the change when they hit the wall at some point, when the climate changes and there's microbes in the air, and they inhale that and it takes over and wakes up stuff. But so do women. And sometimes these girls young men and girls, they've been reproduced so much, they hit the change so quickly. So they're getting these cancers at like 7 years old. Because the climate is that accelerated. Before, the climate was slower, so the system can kind of control the decay process, the regression, and the maturity. But now you're seeing like these 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds look like little old men. Okay? Like these kids are growing up so fast that it's almost a trip to see them because you're like, dude, they're hovering between a child and an adult and they look like little old men. And that's because the environment is so aggressive and they're not keeping up. So the cells are aging faster, maturing faster. So then you have 12-year-olds with mustaches, 12-year-olds with beards. You're like, how the hell did this happen? Because. And so, my mother, she knew what was going on. She knew my peers were really fast. Okay, so I was held back in kindergarten. And also developmentally and socially, I had issues with keeping up with my peers because of such deficits that I was in. But she made sure I did not get with the fast crowd because high school can be extremely fast. Your peers, once you are around your peers, once you reach a certain point in you're an age, parents have no more influence. It's the peers who have influence. And then that's where kids get pregnant. That's where girls get pregnant, boys become fathers. And then that's the end. That's the end. It's the end of that genetic line, especially now. And so with kids getting pregnant at 20, 18, 17, 15, yeah, it's pretty much done for them. Some have enough genetics that they could probably live a little bit longer, but with this environment, everything that they're doing has been accelerated. The kids are maturing faster and dying sooner, and the parents are aging faster and dying sooner, and they're going to hit the wall sooner. It's already happening because people have to keep up with everybody else. They don't know what the world they live in, and they refuse to acknowledge the world they live in. So, fine. But I can't do anything about it, so I just vent on Facebook because that's probably the safest venue. And I hope, I don't filter anything. I say what I say. So it's 3:47 in the morning and I'm this coherent. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that fucking crazy? This is the witching hour. So, yeah, when you finally can face your demons, release and retention, and you are able to deal with the pain, it is not only an exorcism, because, yeah, you're releasing demons. But it's so highly spiritual. It's so surreal. It's so like, many times I woke up where I know I could have died. Why? Because I woke up choking on my own mucus. I woke up coughing. As if something grew that quickly and blocked my airway. And then my immune system, which was primed for it because I conditioned for it when I was awake, saved me when I was asleep. That's why they condition of blowing your nose and coughing, if you can do it, when you're sick during the day, will probably save your ass at night between 3 and 5 a.m. when the environment is that much more aggressive and your immune system has been activated by who knows what. And so, yeah, these kids are getting sent to the doctors all the time to get stuff sucked out of them. These kids that are taking these remedies, elderberry syrup shoved down their throat, all these different natural remedies to suppress their immune system from the mechanism of coughing out the demons, the mucus, when they don't have that conditioning and they're just kind of there and there's no activity, they don't have the strength to do that. It's just going to take, they have growth, yeah. But if the growth is faster, then they're able to build an infrastructure to support the growth. They'll just die in there. They die suddenly. That's what happens to these 23-year-olds. These kids, these young adults, these adults. They don't have the conditioning to cough, sneeze, and blow their nose because they've had everything carved out of them. They've had medication shoved down their throat ever since day one. No one wants to stay home and stay safe, of course, right? Because they got to do all their traditions and keep up with the Joneses. But the Joneses are freaking dying. And so they're sitting ducks. And no one wants to hear anybody cough because like, oh God, it means it's sick, you're bad. So we go to the hospital and get everything sucked out. Well, I understand. Hey, I can't say you're not supposed to take your kid to the hospital. If you don't know what the hell you're doing, take your kid to the hospital. Even if you do think you know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. Because you can't make anybody suffer. But the reason why I mention and talk about this, so that way you know as a human for yourself, as an adult, why these kids are dying suddenly. It's not like you can make these kids cough, sneeze, and blow their nose. And you can try to teach them that, but if they don't have the conditioning and they don't have the wanting to do that, you can't make them suffer. So you're forced to take them to the hospitals. But the reason why I mention that is so that way the adults understand the mechanisms behind saving their own ass. Because the condition of always going to the hospital when you were a kid and the condition of always taking the remedies and being under the influence and the condition of starving yourself has put your children in such dire circumstances because you taught them this. And now they don't have the infrastructure to deal with anything. And so they have to be basically little zombies that are in pleasure and paradise and only can be entertained. And that's it. Maybe help you out a little bit, but their whole life is about being entertained and then dying. And so the parents have to learn from the kids what not to do if they get another outside perspective saying, hey, this is what you're observing. This is what you're setting your kids up for. This is what you've been set up for by your own parents. And so this is not for me to just say what you should do with your kid. I just say it just so you can see it as an example. But again, you can't make these kids suffer. You can't. And I can't make adults suffer. That's why I don't talk to anyone. I don't do any private message between people when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, I'll talk about certain politics. Like yesterday, I was talking about something to do with the IDF, and people are just like, oh my gosh, I really had to, I have been triggered by some of you on Facebook because of whatever, and I've had my own programming that was instilled in me. But I finally was able to take a look at somebody else's perspective as far as around Gaza, and I get it. It's indefensible. Whatever happens and over there in the Middle East and anywhere else, when you're hurting children, and there's a lot of that shit going on, and I get it all over the place. Everything is indefensible. Nothing I can do about it, but it's indefensible. I can't defend what goes on over there in Gaza. I can't defend what goes on out there in families. I can't defend what goes on out there in the public when it comes to innocent children. I mean, I may choose to be like, oh, it's indefensible to remedy them so they don't have any conditioning, but you can't make people suffer. So there's so many ways of which you could take all these perspectives, and it's just, oh God, it's dizzying trying to keep up with, having an aligned thought process, because it's a case-by-case scenario. Not everything fits the same way. And so anyway, so I just stay out of it. I don't talk to anyone. But I understand where the person's coming from. I understand why they are mad at Israel. I understand why they don't like Israel. I get it. Because there are specific actions that are indefensible. So I saw it from that point of view, but it took me a few years of seeing his posts. And I like the dude because I understand where he's coming from. Okay? I like most people on my Facebook because they come from a pure place, they're passionate, and, they just want to save their own children. They just, want a peaceful world. But again, we keep reproducing children that have to assimilate. It's going to be a deadly world because not all kids assimilate properly, and they become deadly, and they develop genetic lines that are deadly that you have to go and control, like some of them that live in the caves that were cannibalizing people. That was based on the movie. The movie was based on that. The Hills Have Eyes. And so that's why we have so many vaccines. Because every time you reproduce a child, that's another entity that the public has to go and assimilate to. That's why I posted that thing about, is this a crime with the vaccines? Because it's not. That represents, a compilation of people having 1 billion kids over here that they really can't take care of or educate. And if you are educating them and taking care of them, what are you doing and what are you teaching them? Okay, so it's not even just like, oh, you have kids and you can't educate and take care of. Maybe they are, but then they're developing monsters that we have to go and regulate when they're adults. And so these arguments, oh God, I'd rather rather give money to the Head Start than pay off adult student loans. Education and children go hand in hand, whether it's an adult or a child. Okay, if you can't do either. You can't educate your kid properly, and you can't feed them properly, where you have to ask the government to give you the Head Start program. What the hell are we doing as a society that we are advocating? People have children they can't take care of, and they can't educate, and they can't feed. And then you politicize it, and then shame those who wanted to get an education. Times have changed. Jobs aren't as certain jobs and things, health issues, jobs, the economy, all these things are changing. And people are just like, oh, well, you got to go pay your student loans because you took them out. You got to be responsible. You got to be accountable. I understand that mentality. Then feed your fucking kids. Don't ask the government for food stamps. Don't ask the government for handouts. Don't ask the government for anything. If you want to get accountability around student loans, then we're not feeding your kids that you're taking on that you can't feed, that you can't educate. And if they're out of line out there, they're going to jail and they're going to make freaking license plates for $1 a fucking day because you had a kid that you couldn't take care of. You had a kid that you couldn't educate. So they're going to be cannon fodder for the military, or they're going to be in jail because inevitably they're going to break the law. So if you want to play that game, well, the system is going to do it. Project 2025 is the accountability. Yeah, you're going to pay your student loans, absolutely. And we're not giving you free food in school. No more Head Start. We'll leave it now for the state level, for the county level. And so you'll have certain states that'll be very Christian oriented. So if you want your kids to be well taken care of, they got to take on God. Oh, but I'm going to homeschool. Okay, well, hopefully they're going to pass the test. I mean, I don't know how they're going to regulate that in these state situations. That's fine. What do? You're homeschool, and then what? But what happens, when they can't handle the air, food, and water, and they die suddenly, and you had them on all these different diets, and you withheld food from them, and there's no doctor. They have no doctor. They never got a health therapy or whatever. They never got public health therapy. And so these kids die suddenly, and then CPS is at the house. CPS like, what the hell happened here? Why is this kid emaciated? Why is this kid weigh next to nothing? And mom is like, I don't know what mom is going to say. Oh, it's going to be interesting. When everything goes back to the state, and these parents have the freedom to homeschool or pick or have these kids go to these schools that are religious oriented, which, okay, I have no problem with that. I don't care. And then these kids are dying suddenly because they're on all these remedies. Food was held with them because they can't handle food. And they die suddenly, and then the state comes in and questions these mothers, questions these fathers. And all of a sudden, now you have parents charged with neglect, starvation. Yeah. So at this point, I'm okay with Project 2025. I'm seriously okay with it. If the left are going to have sex with no birth control, no protection, and they have babies, well, they shouldn't be using Planned Parenthood or anything as birth control. So they'll be held to the same standard as these religious, whether it's Jewish conservatives or Christian conservatives. You'll be held to the same standard. Yeah. We're going back to basics. And I've lived this world before. Because I was raised going back to basics. When I didn't, do something right and I rebelled, because inevitably I was going to rebel, it was back to basics. A bed, a desk, come out to eat, go back and study, go back and sit in your room and think about everything. No TV. Yeah. We're going back to basics. And we're going to be held accountable. And that's what the diet suddenly is. That's what all the diseases are. That's what all the resistance is, because people don't want to be held accountable. And so they'll blame stuff, and that's fine. You can blame the air, food, and water. You can blame the environment. You wouldn't be wrong about the environment because it's more influential. But the environment is going to hold people accountable who have committed transgressions against their immune system. That's why I am pretty much 1,000% sober. No drugs, no remedies, no alcohol, no crazy sex. And I'm not even a right-wing Christian or a conservative, but I have obviously conservative values based upon what I'm talking about. No animals. I study. I use the time that I'm awake in the middle of the night to either watch videos and keep up with things going on or learn about things that I didn't know about. I'm not into pleasure in paradise or gallivanting. I've done all that. It's funny, I see people on my Facebook and they're part of these MLMs and they get rewarded to go to like Punta Cana and they live in Florida. I'm like, oh, so I know they're not paying money because probably the company that sponsored that trip is paying for it. But I'm like, okay, so you live in Florida, which is basically paradise. And you're going to go vacation at Punta Cana, which is another Florida, but in a different part of the world. Vacationing at where you might as well just save your money and save your microbes and build a life you don't have to take a vacation from. Build a life you don't have to take a vacation from, that you don't need to seek respite from groupthink, that you don't need someone to save you and tell you that you're validated. Build a life you don't need to run away from. And that's part of the problem with our society, is that we've built lives that we have to go take vacations from. We have to go and leave and go travel around. I've been a lot of places in the world. I mean, I've traveled around myself. And yeah, there are exotic places and people who've contributed a lot to our society, who run their own companies and they have extra money. They're out there gallivanting, and they should. They earned it. They helped society. They developed innovation. And so they're enjoying it. That's great. They're probably not going to recoup resources lost, because everywhere they go, they take on more microbes that are putting them way behind the 8 ball. But they're okay with aging out. They're okay with the life that they have lived. They're okay with dying at some point. And you can't fault them for that either. Let them enjoy it. Not that they need my permission, but that's the thing. So I've done a lot of the traveling in my younger years. I've lived a lot of different lives. Now it's time to stay home, stay safe, develop a life I don't have to take a vacation from. And because I suffered a lot. And so everything's relative. When you've suffered and you're not suffering as much, it's a nice vacation. Because I know what it's like to suffer astronomically. So some of you are going to be facing the change that might happen earlier than 50. And you're going to figure out, are you willing to suffer to live and realize the next lifeline, your next Hayflick limit? But you're going to be in pain. And of course, again, I couldn't tell you if you could do that or not. But that's what's required. And you have to support that pain with all food. And you got to change your life. And scaling back from friends and family and animals and entertainment and all the things and the trappings of wealth, to scale back, to sit by yourself and face everything. I mean, that's the thing our society is built on, family and friends and groupthink. How are you going to do that? I don't know. But that's probably what's going to be required, because you can only imagine when people come into your house and then you get sick. Like every single time I'm around new people, I get hives. Why? Because that's growth. Their energy caused growth. And then, of course, the microbes I inevitably will inhale will cause a hive, and then it goes away. Some people, it'll wake up things in their body they won't be able to deal with, or they'll have to deal with it. And they're like, oh God, this is too much. I can't be around you. I got to stay home and stay safe. And that's when you have to learn how to entertain yourself with no animals, no children, maybe a husband or wife who has their boundaries. They don't cross them all the time. You don't have a lot of friends, a lot of requirements. I mean, that's pretty much being on your own. That's pretty much being emotionally self-sufficient. And you can have delivery services. So, yeah, scaling back to just one, the matrix, getting out of the matrix and becoming just one is a progressive conditioning. And it's not easy, because you will get resistance from people around you. Why don't you want to hang out with us? What, you think you're too good? Come on, come to my birthday. Come to my, my wedding. Come to my this, come to my that. Oh, you weren't a real friend. Oh, you were just using me. You'll get every single flippin' manipulation. Friends don't abandon people. People who abandon people, their friends are just using you or some shit. I've seen that all over, Yeah, you will hear everybody say, you will hear people who cannot handle being on their own say that you were just using them when you walked away. You don't have to walk away from people. You can keep in contact through the internet. But no, if they can't have you in their personal space, having you give them something, then the friendship means nothing. If you can't hang out with them and get drunk with them and play pool or go to a movie or go out to dinner all the time, if you can't be in their very presence, then basically you're using them. You weren't a real friend. You were a fake friend, according to them. So that's what you're going to get from those who are so desperate for somebody to be in their space. And it'll be very difficult to scale down when you have those types of people in your world that will say friends don't abandon people, only if they're using them, they'll abandon them. And that's it. They're not real friends. Oh, it pisses me. When I see that on Facebook, I want to react, but I just don't like me now. Because I know what they're doing. They have abandonment issues and they can't function on their own. I've had to walk away from a lot of situations because I knew that this relationship ran its course. You saw that in the J world. How many people were next to me? They used me, I used them. It was a quid pro quo. We got permission from each other to work together for whoever knows how long. And then when that relationship ran its course, it was done. It was done. That, we all agreed upon what that temporary relationship was. We used each other and we were there for each other when we needed it. And then now it's done. Now, if one leaves earlier than what the other person expects, then they feel all abandoned and all this and all that. And they're going to say all their shit. And hey, there is no good time to walk away. There's never a good time to walk away from someone who is desperate for your attention, desperate for your company. And so then you got to say, you know what? It's not my job to keep you entertained. Go figure it out. A strong person can walk away and still be okay and not feel manipulated into staying in a situation that isn't good for them. But weak people will stay in situations not good for them because they allow the manipulation of, oh God, you're not a real friend if you don't hang out with me all the time. And then they become basically food for that person. They get cannibalized by that person. And that's why people destroy themselves voluntarily, because they have no ability to function on their own by themselves. And they also get manipulated into relationships that they can't get out of. And so a strong person can walk the fuck away and not feel guilty. Because you can't save people who can't even function on their own. You can't save them. You never could save them. But both of you needed each other for that moment in time. And so if anything, you saw how I got into a relationship with people in the J world. And we were there for each other for that certain amount of time. There was specific needs, moderators, people next to me, collaborators. And we were something meaningful during that time. And then the relationship ran its course. It was done. I walk away first all the time because if I don't, the person would suck me dry. And I don't want to suck anyone else dry. When I figured out that I was dependent on somebody for something, whether it was their illustration skills or the promises of potential money and all this other stuff, I stayed in it. And I'm like, I don't want to be dependent upon somebody to illustrate my book. And I don't want to be dependent on somebody to build my website or do this. I got to do it on my own. Because once you get dependent on someone doing something for you, then what are you in that relationship for? It's not authentic. And if that's all that relationship is built on, then yeah, you're using people. And it's all fake. Well, what is a real relationship? I don't know. I'm out there and I say what I say. I have people that I support. They support me on some level. We don't cross fucking boundaries. We offer each other information. We bounce off each other. And then we go to our prospective corners and we deal with our own shit. We don't have to suck the life out of somebody else in order to stay alive. We can suck the life out of ourselves and then replenish it. And still be a contributing member of society without hurting somebody else or taking up so much of their time that they have to go and take a rest and take a vacation from you. I mean, it's like work. When you have to take a vacation from your friends and family and your job, it's basically work. When you need rest from your family and friends and your job, and you're like, God damn, I just can't. Yeah, you're basically work. So that's why I don't commodify the J world anymore. I think the only commodification is maybe $1 every couple months from the website, if that. But once you commodify something like the J world, it becomes work, and then it ceases to have any meaning. Then it becomes a commodity, and then and you can't sell this to people. You can't. There's no way to sell what I'm doing to people. Because why would you take on suffering and pain? You can't sell that to people. You can only sell death and pleasure and paradise and maybe a new experience. But even then, you don't know if that person can handle the experience. So I don't even sell the experience because I don't know what kind of experience you're going to get. It's all relative to your background. And so when you commodify your friends and your family, then they become work. And then you lose yourself. So I don't want people around me to become work. My husband and I, we work for each other. We have a common goal. We negotiate our survival. I'm not a feminist and I'm not a right-wing Christian, though I might come off as very traditional, but no. I understand the left-wing point of view, but I'm 50 years old. I'm not afraid I'm going to get pregnant. And, oh God, am I going to get access to abortion services? Nah. No eggs have dropped since early last summer. Before April 8th. Okay, so I'm pretty much done. And thank God. So I don't have to worry about so I, negotiate my survival with my husband. He negotiates his survival with me. And we respect each other. Now that he's been feeling pain, he kind of understands now what I've been dealing with the last couple of years. But it took him a while because the climate had to change really aggressively for him to feel it. But it was progressive. And now he's waking up at 3 a.m. going like, God damn, yeah, that's what I've been feeling the last freaking 3 years. People are like, oh, get over it. Go do this. Go, you need to exercise. Shut the fuck up. But when you feel the pain, you're not going to be telling your friends, oh, get over it. Here, take this drug. No. When you feel the pain, when you're not under the influence of drugs and alcohol and cannabis and distractions and other things, you will then have an appreciation for the change. And for why a person is like, I'm not going to kill myself with cannabis or with alcohol or drugs or remedies. I'm going to sit with this. But I don't want to deal with your bullshit saying I should go do this and that and everything else. I'm choosing to save my own fucking life. I'm choosing. And so, yeah. So women, if you can't handle a relationship, you can't negotiate your survival, you don't belong in any relationship. Not even with friends, because you can't even handle that. Women have to figure out how to negotiate their survival with their friends, their family, their husbands or wives. If they don't have any kind of negotiation skills, then they don't belong in them, or they should just take whatever somebody gives them. Because what are you going to do? You have to negotiate your survival in everything. And so now we're watching the extreme feminists out there. Now they're like, we got to go take on GUNs. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Yeah, there are idiot men out there. And there are idiot women out there. But these women that are in relationships with men that voted for Trump, it's not just the women's side of it. There's other parts of it, but like any kind of package deal, you have to differentiate why it is you voted for somebody and say, okay, well, I don't agree with this part of it because women should have the right to choose and that sucks. But voting for Kamala meant this, and all that stuff. And you saw what Kamala and Biden did. And look, they sold us down the river and gas prices are this. And, so you can develop arguments and you don't have to have your wives or girlfriends want to divorce you because you voted for Trump. but that require men to know how to articulate their position, and that require women to know how to articulate their position. And if they don't have any kind of communication skills, then they're just gonna be like this, and that's where you're gonna see people just break up because they can't fucking communicate. And so what was that relationship based upon? It was based upon sex and kids. And that's it. Because they had nothing else to offer each other. And so that's fine. Break up. We don't need another domestic violence situation. And we don't need more kids. So what the feminists are doing are actually what the system wants them to do. Swear off of men, no children, no sex, they don't get victimized. And let them figure it out, but they can't be deadly to somebody else. And so if the right-wing women decide to have children, then it'll be within the family. And if they get divorced, well, you hope she has enough support system. And she'll have to reap what she's sown. And the left-wing feminist woman will have to reap what she's sown. If she wants to go and have myriads of unprotected sex with different people, she's going to have to figure it out. And so we will be competing on a level playing field, just like Klaus Schwab said. That's what he meant by competing on a level playing field. Accountability. And accountability is brutal, because sometimes death is the accountability when you've committed so many transgressions against your immune system. Having too many kids, too many remedies, too many drugs, alcohol, not enough discernment for how often you go out there and what your jobs are and all this other stuff. And people are being held accountable through their immune system. All right, bye.